Let me ask you one question. What is the most important skill in business, in your opinion? Think about it for a couple of seconds while I'm speaking. Do you want to create lasting success with a business? Of course you do. Most of the entrepreneurship success stories on the internet these days promote becoming an entrepreneur as the best way to do only things that you love doing, which actually is not 100% accurate. But let's let it sit for a minute. Creating businesses is the most effective way to financial independence and starting focusing on habits people love doing. Building a team means getting rid of all the things that you don't like doing, not because the work is boring, simply for the fact that the entrepreneur often is not the best option to get the job done. There are other people that are better. But when entrepreneurs want to create lasting success like Steve Jobs did with Apple, it takes a little bit more than just starting a limited company, hiring a few people. First of all, a great product is needed, and someone must produce this product, which in principle very often is a team. And in the end, someone must sell the product. So let's go back to the question that I asked a couple of minutes ago. What is the most important part of creating a business? What is the most important business skill? Did you find your answer? In my opinion, it is selling. Why? The answer is simple. Companies that know how to sell well will always succeed. Those who only have a product, well, you don't believe it? Here are a few stories of great technology that failed. All mobile phones before the iPhone. Before Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone to the global market in 2007, the mobile industry was well established and divided between companies from Europe and Asia. Every person in the Western world had 2-3 mobile phones at home in their house. And the mobile companies were cutting back on selling mobile phones because the market was 100% penetrated and there was no growth anymore. And let's face it, when I looked at the iPhone at the first version in 2007, I only had one thought. Why should anybody buy another mobile phone when they already have 3 of that kind at home? And the first iPhone didn't do anything that was unique. I mean, it could play music, but many people had already MP3 players, iPods, or also mobile phones with this ability to play music, to upload MP3s and listen to the music wherever they were going. That's it. I mean, the touch screen was basically a very nice feature, but the core problem back then was with the ability of downloading and also the evolvement of the internet was basically connection speed. Data was the big problem. Back in 2006, 7, 5, I worked at Orange, and a subsidiary of Orange One had the slogan 50-50-05. 50% of all revenues should come from data, latest by 2005. And guess what? The iPhone didn't even have the latest standards in data transfer, 3G. The successor of the iPhone first version, the iPhone 3G, was not named iPhone 3 because it was the third installment, simply because it needed another version to add the 3G ability that other mobile phones already had. So why the hell should anybody buy an iPhone that was not able to play 3G and was a step back? Even as Steve Jobs announced that you can surf the internet with that, why should I want a smartphone that I can surf the internet with? but I can't download data at the proper speed. Doesn't make any sense, does it? When we look now on the market, I think everybody is aware that the Apple iPhone created an entire new product category. And I think still about 20% of the smartphone sales belong to Apple. And the high-priced products of Apple, I think, take 80% of our revenues and profits in the smartphone market. According to an article on the internet in the second quarter of 2021, Apple got 40% of global smartphone revenues and captured 75% of our operating profits while shipping only 30% of the units. Isn't that an amazing feature? Especially, I'm delighted the first iPhone was nothing special. But what was special with Apple was Steve Jobs' pristine expertise in selling. I basically watched all Steve Jobs presentations, and you can learn a lot from them. With the talent of selling, you can basically wipe out an entire industry, even when you don't have the best product on the market yet. Of course, you have to evolve the product, but selling made the day for Apple with the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad, and also the AirPods. Tim Cook is similarly gifted like Steve Jobs in selling. Other examples. Do you remember Video 2000? Me neither. Why? Back in the 70s and 80s, Video 2000 basically was technically advanced over VHS. These were the videocassette standards back in the days. I think the older generation will probably know it, and the younger generation can Google it. And in the end, VHS succeeded. Why? The inventors decided on an open license and gained significant market share amongst customers. They were simply quicker to the market. They rolled their product out, not thinking twice. And this is a selling skill. Whereas the team of Video 2000 tried to make a perfect product, sitting at home, figuring it out, what would be the best possible solution, without taking into account the market dynamics. The third example, Amazon, who needed an online bookstore back in 1995, when there are so many bookstores just round the corner. Why should anybody want to wait for a book to be delivered when they just can go to the next bookstore and get it immediately? This was the perception of Amazon back in 1995. Jeff Bezos was called the nerd of the Amazon because he did this crazy thing of thinking it is a great business model to take a long time to deliver a book when you can basically buy it right now in the bookstore around the corner. But Jeff Bezos recognized two things. Many people in the world want to read books that are not part of the offering of local bookstores. When people feel the urge to buy a book, they want to act immediately and don't want to walk to the next bookstore. Amazon invented their one-click payment feature, which is genius. Which skill Jeff Bezos had, you ask? Selling. People who know how to sell can sell other people's products, but both customers and producers won't find together without salespeople. Think about it. Customers and producers won't find together without salespeople. Also, when we come later, hopefully somewhere in the future, into the digital reality of the Metaverse, people are always the same. They want to discuss, they want to talk, and they want to buy and sell goods. And selling will also be a crucial key in the Metaverse. And people always want to do business with people. That's why selling, in principle, can only be automated, but never ever can selling be replaced entirely with artificial intelligence. So when we want to learn how to sell, it's probably wise to go to the best possible salesperson on the planet. And one of the most successful salespeople I have ever heard of was Jordan Belfort. I didn't know him before Scorsese's film, The Wolf of Wall Street. And I believe many people have seen the life story of Jordan Belfort meanwhile, which ended in him being imprisoned for using his sales skill too excessively. According to Investopedia, in 1999, Belfort and his associate Danny Porosh were indicted for money laundering and securities fraud. Belfort pleaded guilty to fraud for the pump and dump schemes, which may have cost his investors as much as $200 million. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison and ultimately served 22 months in prison. Amazon describes him as Jordan Belfort was born in Queens, New York. He hustled ISIS to put himself through college, showing early entrepreneurial flair. His first business sent him bankrupt at 24, so he went down to Wall Street with $100 in his pocket and ended up building one of the largest brokerages in America, the now infamous Stratton Oakmont. A hard-partying lifestyle ended in crash and burn. Ultimately indicted by the federal government, Belfort served 22 months in prison and time in rehab. He's now a highly successful motivational speaker. His story has been made into a Golden Globe-winning and Academy Award-nominated film starring Leonardo DiCaprio and directed by Martin Scorsese. He is currently living in Los Angeles. I listen to Jordan Belfort's podcast and I like his style and content. And not only does Jordan Belfort have a podcast and speak about, of course, selling and investment and other things, he also published a book. Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort. Subtitle is Straight Line Selling, Master the Art of Persuasion, Influence, and Success. In his book, he describes his selling system, the straight line system. When I saw it at Amazon and in the bookshelf at the bookstore around the corner, I thought, well, just another book on sales like the many others that were already written. Why should I buy this? But after seeing the Scorsese film and knowing Jordan Belfort's life story, I thought I'd give it a try and expected to learn more about how to betray people, which basically was the reason why he got imprisoned in the first place. So I was curious, but had low expectations on the content. But already after reading the first page, I decided to change my mind. Jordan Belfort addressed earlier in the book, in principle, criticism that I also had in my mind. What should I learn from somebody who was in prison? And he did it really, really, really well. Early on, he addressed his problems with the justice system and warned to use selling wisely and not fraudulent. A great salesperson, it's really a great skill of salespeople to take the first objection that a potential customer has right out of the way, right at the beginning, even before addressing the problem. It's a smart thing that everybody should keep in their mind. When there are obvious objections, address them early on, and you take a lot of pressure out of the situation. The book contains a myriad of great advice, but one stands out in my opinion. It's the two phases of selling that I also advocate when I coach and consult people in fundraising. Jordan Belfort calls the two phases information gathering phase on one hand, and on the other hand, the selling phase. The answer why one salesperson is successful while the other fails is in understanding these two phases well. When salespeople contact me, the calls sometimes take interesting turns right from the beginning, both in my private life and also professionally. For example, the insurance salesperson who tries to sell life insurance to me as an investment. You need to understand that, in my opinion, life insurance is never, ever a wise investment. There are better opportunities on the market. I already made up my mind in the 90s that the only reason that I pay for a life insurance is kids, to secure the future of my kids, but definitely not for investment reasons. Life insurances aren't a good investment. They are no investment at all. Those with a payout at the end of the insurance period lock the capital in for almost 2 decades with no real ROI. It is better than nothing, but not even close to the average return of the S&P 500 or Berkshire Hathaway, which lies between 10 S&P 500 and 20% Berkshire Hathaway. But the thing is, every once in a while, insurance salespeople try to sell me this kind of investment. In the first 10 seconds of such a call, I expressed that I am not interested in buying into life insurances in any case. And guess what? Do you think the majority hangs up after that? No. Most of them try to convince me to change my mind about life insurances as an investment. And Jordan Belfort, in his book, expresses right away that this behavior is a waste of the time of the potential client. What is even worse, it's a waste of the precious time of a salesperson. There are several categories of buyers that Jordan Belfort describes as buyers in heat, buyers in power, a person that just comes looking, and simple mistake. From the seller's perspective, in the case of life insurances, I'm either a mistake, a person without any need for the product, or at best, I'm curious with absolutely no intention of buying. Jordan Belfort clearly states, don't waste your time on such people with a full sales pitch or follow-up calls. He recommends asking in the first couple of minutes, how can I help you? What do you need? And this first phase he calls information gathering phase. Talk a bit about the services or product you are selling, but move on if there is no need. Never try to evangelize anybody. It is a complete waste of time. To improve your closing rate, move on to the next prospect on the list and close the one you don't need for the time being. But if you decide to press on, it most certainly has only one effect. It annoys people. At best, you can ask for, instead of pressing on, you can ask for referrals or just follow up in a couple of months. Maybe the situation changed. In my case, it would be that I have kids. This would definitely change my opinion on life insurance for the sake of the future of my kid. But other than that, it's just useless. And I get one point of criticism very, very often. Selling doesn't work in the investment world. My core area of expertise is helping scientists to get investors and industrial partners into their companies. Even though it is not transactional, as Jordan Belfort describes, the phases also exist in this world. Some industrial partners and investors don't invest in the area the company operates in. Sometimes they just are not open for in-licensing when it comes to the industry. Sometimes they are just out of money and don't have any capital left to invest. Moving on in such cases is the best decision. Keeping them updated every 6 to 12 months with social media activities or a newsletter is sufficient. The overall perception of the book. So, which is my overall perception of the book? I enjoyed it reading from the first to the last page. Every page contains sound advice that helps everybody who wants to improve their selling skills, especially understanding better what the information gathering phase is and the actual selling phase helps a lot. So the next time you reach out to people to sell your service or your product, bear in mind that first you start with gathering information. Then, based on the information, you divide potential clients into buyers in heat, buyers in power, lucky-lose, or mistakes, and you sell only to the first two categories. If you want to know what buyers in power and buyers in heat are, get a copy of this book and start reading today. You can order it on Amazon. Enjoy your day.